Super Metroid was a trailblazer in every sense of the word. The atmosphere, gameplay structure, and even the minimalistic story really meant a lot to people, even to the point of helping create the term Metroidvania to describe a subgenre of games that took after the groundwork that Metroid and Castlevania laid out. But despite all of that, the Metroid series would still remain dormant for nearly a decade before seeing another release. Well, why was that? I mean, didn't it sell well? Wasn't it pretty well received? Yeah. In America. The Metroid series has never been a heavy hitter in Japan, which probably makes sense on some level considering a lot of the ideas behind these games were inspired by Western media. It had its fans over there, but it wasn't enough to keep a bunch of Metroid titles pumping out onto new machines like you would see for the more popular Nintendo mascots. I mean, just look at the Nintendo 64. There were lots of Mario games, from Mario 64 to tons of spin-offs like Paper Mario and the Mario Party series, and the Zelda franchise dropped one of the most critically praised games of all time and followed it up with my favorite game ever made, and you'd better believe I'm waiting for the perfect opportunity to gush over Majora's Mask. But Metroid? Nothing. The only time Samus appeared on that console was for Super Smash Bros. It wasn't until 8 years after Super Metroid release that fans would hear from their favorite blonde bounty hunter again, but she was coming back with a plan to make up for the lost time because in November of 2002, not one, but 2 Metroid titles were released. One of which was Metroid Prime, a game that brought Samus into the 3D realm and offered a unique gameplay experience with its emphasis on first-person exploration that went on to start something of a sub-series of the franchise that remains pretty beloved to this day. A very interesting set of games that deserves a Metroid Month all its own, so we'll get deeper into those titles next year. But the other game that hit store shelves at exactly the same time kept things a little more classic, electing for that 2D side-scrolling approach. But all the same, it offered a lot of irreparable changes to the hero of these games. That would be the game we're talking about today, so spoilers ahead, it's time to discuss Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance. So something I'm sure a lot of Metroid fans remember about this game is that this is where games in the series started to lean into the narrative a bit more. There's a heavier reliance on dialogue exchanges here, and there's even a brief cutscene that plays before the title screen even appears, showing Samus having trouble flying her ship for one reason or another before crashing, leaving us with a very eerie version of the title theme. Once the game boots up, we get a little more context. Buckle in, because there's a little more to cover here than usual. Space pirates and Metroids are out of the way, so naturally the Galactic Federation is getting a little braver about exploring the cosmos again, sending a research team to planet SR-388, where there used to be Metroids until, you know, we happened. In an out-of-character move though, the Federation actually makes a good decision by hiring Samus to accompany the team to the planet, but when they arrive, they find a group of indigenous creatures that have been infected by something called Parasite X. This creepy little slab of jello is capable of taking control of living organisms, even able to reanimate dead tissue and mimic the appearance of organisms they've infected. They spread fast and are incredibly dangerous, which is a big problem because the parasite attacks Samus, infecting her nervous system. That catches us up with the scene before, where she crashed her ship because the parasite is killing her from the inside, and once her body is recovered, the Federation has to act quickly to save her. Because her Chozo armor is partly biological and is, in a way, part of her body, they have to surgically remove parts of it, but what they couldn't remove just kind of becomes a permanent part of her exoskeleton. That's when someone chimes in with a solution. After her mission on Zebes, Federation scientists were able to recover cells from the infant Metroid that was killed during the battle with Mother Brain, and they were able to create a vaccine that would integrate itself with Samus's DNA to fight the virus. It turns out the entire Metroid species was not a naturally occurring organism, but was actually created by the Chozo to serve as a predator to the parasite in hopes that the deadly Wiggle Wiggle could never make it off planet SR-388, but since, you know, the parasite was able to thrive and multiply again. But now, with the Metroid vaccine becoming part of Samus's genetic makeup, she is now, for all intents and purposes, part Metroid, kind of making her what's left of the species. And now the parasite not only doesn't pose a threat to her anymore, but she can now absorb this stuff to empower her, making her the most effective weapon against this threat. Turns out they'll need her pretty quick too, because a research station orbiting SR-388 where they sent the infected parts of Samus's armor is in trouble with some kind of explosion being caused there. Samus is sent out with a new ship and orders to investigate the facility, and let's just take a breather here for a second. So that is quite the info dump. Sorry about that, but again, this game was trying harder than those preceding it to tell a story, and it does work for the most part, but that intro is kind of beefy, and honestly, it's a jarring way to start off this adventure. It really runs in contrast with what Super Metroid put forward. I mean, that game started off with a plot recap too, but there really wasn't as much to take in, and it definitely didn't take as long to get things moving. And at least that setup was still something that you could play through and experience for yourself, whereas here, you're sifting through blocks of text and still images to get the cliff notes on the events leading up to the main adventure. Now, a lot of this does pay off later, and anyone who knows me knows I love a game that can tell me a good story, but a game in and of itself is not a story, and the plot should serve as a complementary piece to the gameplay, not necessarily as the main course. I honestly think that statement is kind of opening up a huge can of worms that can spring off into a million different directions, so I guess I'll just sum it up by saying pacing is important, and Metroid Fusion really doesn't nail that in the beginning segment. Once you get to the BSL station, things feel a little off. You have this computer on your gunship that will chat with you at terminals around the facility and tell you what and where your objective is, giving you some direction as you proceed through the facility. Now, as Metroid games go, this is one that I hadn't returned to in a while, but I remember thinking that this was super railroady, but to my surprise, it really wasn't as bad as my memory made it out to be. Again, the beginning portions of the game see the computer throwing a lot of text at you to get you acquainted with the setting, but it does tone down a lot in the later portion, but this is also where the narrative elements start to really inform gameplay. First big thing that's introduced here is how upgrading and new weapons work in this game. When Samus had parts of her armor removed, it took away a good portion of her abilities, but a lot of the parasites now roaming this facility have mimicked those traits, weapons, and upgrades. As you travel through the station, you can see that there are tons of alien creatures from the surface of SR-388 being cared for here, and that they've been infected by the parasite, and the more powerful creatures are infected with Core X parasites, larger versions of the life form that can take control of dangerous creatures and serve as the game's bosses. By beating the monsters they infect and their cores, you can obtain part of Samus's old abilities. What's more, the Galactic Federation tries to send Samus data over these upgrade rooms that will help you unlock her old abilities, but as the X starts to realize how she's been getting more powerful over the course of the game, you see them start to actively attack those upgrade rooms and steal the powers before she can get to them. An obvious sign that the parasite is frighteningly intelligent, but also just really cool from a game design aspect. They set up a really clear way of unlocking new items, but they take it away from you and make you fight for your life to claim them again. And I really do mean fight for your life, because this game does not pull any punches and you're gonna see your health bar plummet if you aren't careful. Every section of this station is fashioned to mimic the habitat of the alien creatures living on SR-388, and the openings to these areas will grant you access to save stations and recharge terminals, and you do well to take advantage of them because the parasite-infected aliens on this ship aren't cutting Samus any slack. As for getting between these locations, well, the computer is always gonna tell you what your next objective is and give you an idea of that destination, but sometimes reaching the goal isn't as obvious as it first looks. This game loves to set you off in the right direction and then drop obstacles in your way, so you have to be a little more creative about your progression, and I really love that. I had actually forgotten about how well the game sets up that kind of design. The bait and switch is something I really appreciate in this game, and it's something Fusion uses a lot. One of my favorite instances is where you're trying to make it to part of the ship to repair it, but suddenly the power goes out while you're on the elevator, forcing you to find a way around and bringing back those feelings of exploration and puzzle solving that Super Metroid introduced. But it all feels very novel here, fitting in seamlessly with the setting. That, and I just love when games take something like a transition screen you've seen a billion times and makes it suddenly not work the way it usually does to really knock you out of your comfort zone and test your ability to improvise. Even when you think you found a group of survivors, it actually turns out that it's just these little guys from Super Metroid who taught you the shine spark and wall jump. It's a shame they got away from an exploding planet only to end up here, but hey, they at least take safe refuge in your ship. By far, one of the coolest and most recognizable things the game throws at you though is a recurring enemy that you can't even fight. I mean, you face a lot of bosses in this game that all represent something you want to get back, like the morph ball, space jump, speed booster, stuff like that. Man, they throw some crazy stuff at you, like even a clone of Ridley for some reason. I mean, it's a cool fight and I love Ridley, but I logically don't understand how the parasite mimicked him. But the real kicker is this experiment called Nightmare. Like, jeez, guys. I thought the Crocomire thing was intense, but mashing missiles into Nightmare's mushy face as it melts and decays into a gross sludge is just on another level entirely. But far more frightening than any of those monsters you face is the SAX. Remember that the parasite infesting the station came from the infected armor removed from Samus at the beginning of the game, and now it's evolved into a monster that's mimicking our hero at her full strength. And considering the real Samus is part Metroid now, that makes the SAX even more deadly. The ability to absorb the X-Parasite is nice and all, and I like how it replaces the old health and ammo pickups from the old games as a method to integrate the story with the mechanics, but it also comes with the crippling weakness of the Metroid species, and that would be extreme cold temperatures. In places like this frozen part of the station, or areas where these ice-infused parasites roam, this poses a threat you have to work around, but where the SAX is concerned, the creature's ability to use Samus's ice beam means it can murder you in a matter matter of seconds. You cannot fight her. You will die almost instantly if you try, so in areas where the game has you crossing her path, you have to stay quiet and out of the way until she passes by, and considering how fast she can take you out if she sees you, it adds an insane level of tension to these moments. It really brings back the sci-fi horror roots of the series, and it's one of my favorite elements of the game. Constantly having to sneak around this terrifying monster, copying your most powerful abilities, and trying to find a way to build yourself up to take her down. And on your quest to grow more powerful, you'll sometimes gain access to abilities that the computer and the Federation weren't expecting you to be able to get, and it's here where you start to see the cracks in the direction the Federation has been giving you. Samus comments pretty early on in the game that something about the computer reminds her of her former superior officer, Adam Malkovich, a stern but ultimately caring man, at least according to this game, who Samus looked up to and who eventually sacrificed his life for hers, and she decides to refer to the computer by his name. This becomes more and more relevant as the AI speaking to her seems to show signs of sentience and acts slowly more and more like her former superior officer, but it's still quick to scold Samus when she takes things a step too far and flies in the face of the Galactic Federation's orders entirely and discovers a restricted area housing Metroids. The entire BSL station was designed as a way to propagate Metroids, using the same DNA salvaged to create the vaccine that saved Samus and raise them, presumably to use as biological weapons. Exactly like what the Space Pirates wanted to do. Samus doesn't have a lot of time to soak this in before the SAX comes in and tries to lay waste to the place as the lab gets decimated by the creature. Samus escapes, and that portion of the facility is removed from the rest of the station, destroying itself in the cold vacuum of space. The Adam computer explains that the Federation is pretty pissed that she found the lab and more or less wants to remove her from the picture. After seeing the terrifying potential of the parasites, including their ability to do whatever Samus can and even reproduce asexually, meaning there's actually like 10 other SAX life forms on the ship all hunting us down, they decide for some stupid reason they want to try to find a way to control the parasite and see it as more useful than the bounty hunter. After a little bit of protesting and persuading, the computer shows off enough humanity to confirm that it is, in fact, an AI based on the mind of Adam Malkovich and agrees to help Samus redirect the station to collide with planet SR-388 below, destroying the station, the planet, and Parasite X forever. Just before you make it to the control deck though, you finally face down with one of the SAX life forms and take it out before it grows into this Boglin reject. After killing that and destroying the core, the parasite still manages to escape, but there's no time to worry about that now. Samus sets the station to collide with the planet and sprints back to her ship? An Omega Metroid managed to escape the lab before it exploded, and man, it knocks you down to 1 health in a single hit. Oh wait, I've played Super Metroid, I see where this is going. The SAX pops in to fight the Omega Metroid, but is defeated pretty quickly, but not before getting a few good hits in, proving that this thing is still susceptible to the Ice Beam, and after absorbing the core, Samus is back at full strength and takes out the Metroid with ease. This is a fun scene, but something I can't ignore is how derivative it is of the ending of Super Metroid, and yeah, trying to emulate that feeling of the final boss is a worthy goal, but it doesn't really feel the same here, and I don't even understand why the SAX would attack the Omega Metroid at all. I get it hunting after a weaker version of Samus, but this thing is like its natural, or I guess unnatural predators, so whatever. Everything but Samus dies, and Adam instructs your little animal buddies on how to pilot the ship just enough to rescue Samus, who escapes just in the nick of time and reflects on the fact that she's destroyed 2 planets now, and the Galactic Federation and the universe at large are not going to be on her side here. I mean, the Federation will probably have a pretty easy time painting Samus as a terrorist and making her a public enemy, trying to cover their tracks for their illegal experiments on the BSL station. Sadly, we still don't know where the story goes from here. Even today, 18 years later, we still don't have a game that takes place after Metroid Fusion. And I mean, it's not for lack of trying. There was a game in the works, or at least rumored to be in the works, called Metroid Dread. It was supposed to center around Samus' struggle against the Galactic Federation, an organization that she used to work under and trust. But that project never really came to fruition. And it sucks because by the time I got to the end of playing this game, I was pretty interested in this part of the storyline. While this game does lean into its narrative maybe a little too much to the point where it does hurt the pacing of the game, it's still a really fun story, and the game still manages to introduce a lot of really cool ideas, moments, and gameplay structure that I really didn't come to appreciate until this most recent playthrough. I've really come to admire the way the game sets up what looks like a strictly linear adventure, only to pull the rug out from under you and open the way to that classic Metroidvania exploration, and play with the other tropes of the series in super fun ways, like how collecting items and even stuff like health and ammo in a really really creative fashion. I started this playthrough kind of slogging through the text boxes, but by the end, I was thrilled. I still need more practice with this one. I haven't gotten it down on the same level as like Super Metroid, but I'm excited to revisit this one, and honestly, because of the somewhat more streamlined nature of the gameplay, I think I could easily recommend this to newcomers trying to dip their toes into the franchise, just as long as they're okay with playing catch-up on a plot element or two. So if there isn't another game taking place after Metroid Fusion, what's left to discuss this October? I don't even have a clever quip for this one. So we're gonna wrap up this first Metroid month by taking a look at the shame of the series, the enigma of misguided ideas, and the character assassination of one of the coolest women in gaming. So I hope you'll join me this Halloween as we take a look at Metroid Other M. And I don't even know if I'm ready for this one, guys. Until then, you can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Discord, whichever you prefer, links in the description, and of course, as always, spread the word, tell your friends, and until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. See you next mission. Hey there everyone, thanks so much for watching. You made it to the end of this video, and I have also made it to the end of this video. Oh man, I've only got one Metroid Month video left to make, and it's probably gonna be the beefiest one. I'm really contemplating how this video is gonna work out. I've already gotten all the footage for Other M, and I've already gotten partway through the script while finishing up this video. So, man, I'm just kind of hoping for the best here. The Other M review is going to be interesting. Of course, this video, that video, and all the videos I make are all made possible by incredible viewers like you, as well as my Patreon supporters. On that note, I want to give a very special shout out to Patricia Marcoux, Christine Larkin, and Surus the Skeptic, my current top tier patrons. Thank you guys so much for helping support this channel and everything that I do here. With all of that said, thank you so much for watching. I have been Wayne. I really need a break after this, and I guess those little animal buddies can pilot a ship. Alright, peace.